Up next, we have Douglas Squirrel, who is a consulting CTO, and here with a session title I think we can all relate to very hard, which is called You Want It When?
All right. I think I see myself, so I must be on. There we go. Excellent. So I'm Squirrel. That's what most people call me. I like to go by my surname. If you want to call me Douglas, you can. I've never met Doug, so don't call me that or I won't answer. I've been a consulting CTO for 6 years, a CTO of some variety for way longer than that. And I've worked with something like 100 organizations. And in those organizations, almost every time, somebody has said, "You want it when? What are you talking about?" And they came to me with some difficult, impossible deadline. A lot of people phone the Squirrel phone, which is my my phone that people can phone anytime they feel like and ask me any question that they want to. They pay me for the privilege, but often they're phoning up with exactly this kind of question. I've got this impossible deadline from sales. There's no chance I can possibly hit it. They want it by Friday. They've already signed the contract. This is terrible. What should I do, Squirrel? How can I get out of here? What can I save from this terrible disaster? Well, the thing I'm here to tell you is that deadlines, especially and importantly, impossible deadlines, are valuable. You should want to have impossible deadlines. You should look at them as something that is useful fodder for your learning and for your team's improvement. Now, that's kind of nuts. And if you think that you've got a squirrel here telling you something that's nuts, that's good. You guys are welcome to come on over to Slack, which I think I've just managed to join. I'm not sure which channel I'm supposed to be in, but I'll figure it out. And you'll find me. You can also phone the Squirrel phone and argue with me. I don't think you can argue with me directly here, but feel free to fire in some questions. And if I can leave some time at the end, I will. If not, I'd be happy to answer them afterwards. So let me defend this completely impossible, crazy position that deadlines are useful, that in fact, agile software development thrives on deadlines. Let's see if we can understand why that is through the medium of Santa Claus. So I used to be the CTO at a company called Secret Sales. And Secret Sales sells Louis Vuitton handbags for half price. And you can imagine that lots of people want to buy Louis Vuitton handbags for half price, and they especially want to buy them at Christmas. And what we would get is deadlines from the rest of the business. They would say things like, we've got a whole bunch of stock in the warehouse. We really have to move it. I mean, we really want to have a midsummer sale. And so we want to make sure that we have our sale by Midsummer's Day, June the 21st, or whatever day that is. And I would call that a fake or artificial deadline, because you don't really have to get it done by the end of the summer, right? If you got it ready on June the 22nd, then you could still actually sell the handbags for half price. They are not going to rot in one day. So that's an artificial deadline. And then there are real deadlines, and that's what I had at Secret Sales most of the time, because what we would have is not only a limit based on what was in the warehouse, but we had a limit based on this guy. Because Christmas, as you might imagine, if any of you worked in retail at all, is this absolutely crazy time when you make half your money, and Black Friday is absolutely insane, and everything is absolutely crammed up against Christmas. So every year at Secret Sales, I thought I had a solution. I said, great, no problem. I wrote to Santa Claus. I wrote a message, very nice one, like the kids write. I said, dear Santa, can you please bring me something? It's a very special present. It's delaying Christmas. Could we please have Christmas on the 28th? And, if you really have to, if the elves really go on strike, could 27th would be okay. We just need a couple extra days in order to be ready for the Christmas sales, in order to be able to deliver things for Christmas. This guy was not my friend. He never helped me. He never moved Christmas. That's because Christmas is a real deadline. It really exists. It's actually meaningful in the real world. And if you get your Christmas presents on Boxing Day, you're not a very happy person. Your Louis Vuitton handbag is less valuable, and certainly you're a less excited recipient of said handbag if you deliver it, if you get it the day after Christmas. It really changes its value, So that's the difference between a real and a fake deadline. We all know that, but now we have a name for it. And I wanted to give you this story as an illustration of what that looks like. And I'm not going to talk any more about fake deadlines in this talk, simply because I have a limited amount of time. And I think fake deadlines are also tremendously valuable and really interesting. I just haven't got enough time to talk about them. So if you get a fake deadline, you can do one of two things with it. You can reject it, pointing out that it's fake. Hey, you guys just said you wanted it on Friday. There's nothing actually driving that. There's nothing forcing us to actually get it done on Friday. Or I would suggest something different. is that fake deadline is pointing out that there's some lack of trust. There's something interesting happening there. And I happen to have written an entire book. I'm not trying to sell you the book. In fact, I'll send it to you for free if you write to me. But I wrote an entire book with my good friend Jeffrey Frederick, who was on this stage a few days ago. And that book is all about, especially chapter 3, building trust with the rest of your organization. And you can do that through the medium of deadlines. In particular, if somebody brings you a fake deadline, it probably means they don't trust you, because they're trying to pressure you in some unfortunate, unpleasant way. So I would recommend using the techniques there, or writing to me, or picking up the Squirrel phone and asking me, what can we do about that? How can we build trust? Because we have a trust problem. But for the rest of this talk, I'm going to assume that you have a real deadline. It's like Santa Claus. It's like Christmas. It's actually happening on this day. The item that you have to deliver is going to turn into a pumpkin after that day. The customer is really going to fire you. Something is really going to happen on that day. So what do we do with those? So there's 2 ways to approach that. And I'm not, as you can tell, a great fan of slides or a great slide maker, but I hope that you can tell that one of these things is a rocket ship. I think this is one of these by the crazy billionaire who's trying to get to Mars. I'm not sure. I'm not good at rockets either. But one of these is a rocket, traditional rocket. You stick it on the launching pad, you light a match and stick it near the bottom, and it goes up in the air and goes to wherever you want it to go. The second one is a different kind of spaceship, of course, a fictional one. We don't really have these. This is the Starship Enterprise, which I'm sure every member of this audience will know and have a strong opinion about. Of course, this one is better than the one from the 1960s. Okay, great. Cue the debates about that down the pub. So we've got these 2 approaches, and these are very different ways of delivering to a deadline. And which way you use has a strong influence on how you can make use of the deadline. Because that was my promise to you, right? Is that we're going to find a way to make that deadline, that impossible date that somebody gave you that now is real. We've agreed that it's a real one. We're really stuck with it. The contract's signed. It's signed in blood. What are we going to do with it? These 2 ways, you have a choice between them, and which way you choose will have a strong influence on how you make use of that deadline. So what's the rocket ship way? Well, it's the way, oops, my slides just went away. I hope everything's okay. I hope everybody's still hearing me, and somebody will tell me if something's wrong, but you don't need to see the rocket ships. You know what they look like. So a rocket ship is taking off, blasting off into the universe. And the main thing about it is, even if you're an eccentric billionaire, you have to choose the right time to launch your rocket, and you can't change your mind after you decide to have it launch into space and go to Mars. If you change your mind, you're out of luck, because you only have so much rocket fuel. You've pointed it at the right place. You've made sure to launch it at exactly the right moment, and Mars is going to be in exactly the right place so you can get there. You miss it by a few milliseconds, or if you don't fire your rockets at just the right moment, you're out of luck. And you can't decide, oh man, there's an interesting asteroid going by, I want to go there. Nope, your rocket ship is going where it's going. And this is the kind of project that often we think about with Gantt charts and with burn down charts and all kinds of super predictable models that help us be really, really sure that we get to Mars. And people like Musk and NASA and folks like that, people who are building nuclear plants, build software, and they build their systems this way. Because they have hard deadlines that are not only real, but also can't be moved. You can't change your mind as you go. Riding on the Starship Enterprise, completely different experience. If you ever watched the show, you'll know that half the time they're headed to, Deneb 5, and they decide, oh, sorry, there's some massive emergency over here on Quasar 2, and they turn right, and they never get to Deneb 5, or they have to go there later in the show really fast. So the Starship has these wonderful properties that real starships don't actually have, which is that you can be going somewhere and change your mind partway through. It's highly maneuverable. But it's also not very predictable. You can't be sure whether you'll actually get to Deneb 5. If I send the Starship off and, Captain Picard says engage and off he goes, he may not go there because he may get interested in something along the way and decide to go to Venus instead of Mars or do something else. So the Starship method of driving a project, that tends to be the more agile method, the one that is more experimental. Startups tend to use it more often, but anybody really could use either one. And the Starship method is less predictable, but much more flexible. And the challenge is that often when people give us deadlines, they think we're running a rocket ship. And they think to themselves, especially if they're giving us a deadline far in advance, expecting to see it. They want product progress reports, Gantt charts. They want all kinds of material along the way that's going to help them know that we're on track. They want to be sure that the rocket ship is going the right way, and they want to make sure that we've planned it out way in advance so that when we light the match and the rocket goes off, that it's going to get where it's supposed to go. The problem is that often, actually, the Starship is an option they don't know about. They don't know that there's an option to be more flexible. And that if you give them that option, it can often really change the conversation. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes the real situation is we need to do exactly this. There's no shift. There's nothing is going to change in it. We are not going to be coming up with any new ideas along the way. There'll be no interesting asteroids on the way to Mars. We just need to get to Mars, and it has to be exactly this way. Common situation for that is regulatory requirements, right? So I used to be in the city and deal with finance often and big banks, and they had something called Method 2, which I never understood, but I knew that it meant we had to finish a certain set of features by September the 1st, or no one could use our software. So we were kind of motivated to get that set of things done, and we had to use the rocket ship method. Most of the time, though, people said, gee, it would be really great if we had this, and it would be better if we had it in 3 months, and it would be even better if we had it in 2. And you know what? The faster we can get it, the better. So why don't you get it done in 1? And when I hear that, that's when I have an opportunity, the first opportunity, to use a deadline to change the conversation. Because I can say, are we really running a rocket ship here? If it is, that would be really great for me to know. Is there a regulation? Is there something that's forcing me to use this method? Because that would be great to know. But there's also Starship methods. And if I can use a Starship method, I may be less predictable. I might not hit your deadline right on target. But you know what? We might be able to get something done faster. We might be able to get something done sooner that will be part of what you want, and we'll also be able to adjust along the way. And if I can have that kind of dialogue with the person who's bringing me this real deadline that is really out there in the world, and that person says, you know what, actually, that would be useful. It would be great if we could get at least this baseline done by this date. And, you know, if we could change our minds along the way, that would be better. When they tell me that, I know I've been able to change the conversation in a very useful way. So that's my first technique, is ask the person who brings you the impossible deadline, what really is it? Is it a rocket ship? Is it Mars? Do I have to hit it on this exact date? If so, that's really useful. I can build to that. If not, would you consider the Starship method? So that's the first method. And then I'm going to suggest something else, which is a wonderful idea due to a guy called Alistair Cockburn, Cockburn. Guess what? The CK is silent. You can see why. Fantastic inventor of many agile methods. And it's called Elephant Carpaccio. And I'm going to give you just the very briefest version of this in the 8 minutes I've got left. But I can talk lots more about it on douglassquirrel.com. There's a video in which I describe some of it. You can ask me for details about it. Pick up the phone and ask me. Happy to tell you more or to train people that you know in how this works. But the idea of Elephant Carpaccio is we're in the Starship mode. So we're not in rocket ship mode. We're trying to get to this deadline someone's handed us. We've prioritized that deadline. We've decided this is the right thing for us to do. And we're trying to get there with the most flexibility that we can. We're trying to really go far on the flexibility, productivity end of the slider. And Elephant Carpaccio, well, some of you may know what Carpaccio is. It's hard for me as a vegetarian to explain it, but what I understand is that you take a dead animal, like an elephant, you take some meat, and you slice it. And you slice it so thin you can see through each of the slices. So if I were holding one up now, I could see you guys through it. And Cockburn wanted to explain how he was able to deliver tremendous value to people. And he does it every hour. I don't try to teach you that. I'll teach you how to do it every day. That's fast enough most of the time. And he said the key thing in slicing your elephant, that is your big project, the trip to Mars, whatever it is you're trying to get done by that crazy impossible deadline, is to slice the elephant so that all the slices look like an elephant. Now, what on earth could that possibly mean? Well, I'll give you a very brief illustration based on a client of mine called Gecko Board. They make beautiful dashboards that you can put up on the wall or now online. And you can see graphs and charts of your call center and sales numbers and so on. And they wanted to have a way to change the color of the different graphs and charts. And so what they did not do is go away and do the rocket ship method. They didn't design the entire feature, get it all done, get it all ready, put in all the tickets into Jira, and then follow all of them until they were done a few weeks later. Instead, what they did is they made a button. And the button said, choose color. And they made the button live, and it didn't do anything. So when you clicked it, you got a 404 page. And that doesn't seem very good. Why would you want to do that to your users? Well, they had a little beta label on it, and they had a way for users to give them feedback. And those users came to them and said, "Oh my God, the button doesn't work. Why? What is it?" And they said, "That's fine. It's kind of broken today, but we're working on it. What did you want to have happen?" And they explained, "Well, I wanted to change the color, of course. And where did you want to change? What did you expect to see?" They got a lot of information. This is the Starship method, right? You're able to adjust, and they could change what they were going to build. The next day, they built a pop-up. So if something actually popped up when you clicked the button, it was a static JPEG of what you have in your mind when you think of a color picker, right? The little wheel, and you can choose the different colors, and it changes and stuff, except nothing changed, right? You click the buttons, no colors change. What on earth is that good for? Well, they got more phone calls, and actually they started phoning some of the people. They said, "You tried the color picker. Would you try it again?" "Well, yeah, I know. It kind of not clicking. Where are you clicking again? What are you trying to get done?" So they got more information from the users again about what the users were doing, what they were trying to accomplish. Now, you notice what hasn't happened here is nobody's built a database table. Nobody's built business logic. Nobody's built all that stuff that's not visible. And they were actually building some of this in the background, because this stuff each took 1 day to complete. They could just make a little ticket and say, "I'm going to finish this in 1 day." They had a little extra time. They were preparing a bit. But what they were mainly doing was getting something that looked like the elephant, right? This thing kind of looks like a color picker. It's not a very good color picker. It's so bad you can't even click anything on it. But it is kind of feeling like a color picker. And each day that they completed a new thing, they had more of the color picker. And so it became more and more like the full elephant. Well, they kept going like this. It took them 4 or 5 days. And by the end, first of all, they hadn't had to do any estimates. They had got done in the time they expected. They got tons of feedback, and they were able to change what they were doing along the way, the Starship method again. And they met the deadline. They met the expectation of users that they had set, that soon there would be color pickers. And that was a very effective method, which I'm happy to go into lots more detail about. There's whole methods for what happens when something takes longer than a day. How do you track it? What do you do about bugs? There's all kinds of details here about how you run Elephant Carpaccio. But I just wanted to give you this notion that it is in fact possible, and I've taught many teams to do this, and they're very successful and happy. One thing they like doing is not having planning sessions. Boy, I'll tell you, that's a popular part of Elephant Carpaccio. But other folks who are users of the software say, "This is amazing. I can see on day one where we're headed." And sometimes, of course, they say, "You're headed the wrong way. Don't go to Mars today. This is wrong. We're doing the wrong thing." And we don't want to get that done. So we'll do something else. How about Venus, right? So we'll drop the color picker. Nobody clicked the button. And that's tremendously valuable as well. So I want to bring up just one more topic, and I wasn't smart enough to make a slide for this one, so I'll just leave you looking at the beautiful slices of elephant here. But the key thing that a deadline also gives you is the opportunity to prioritize, and that was what I was just illustrating. I said, well, maybe you'll start on Elephant Carpaccio, you'll start the Starship method, and you'll say, "Hey, man, I don't want to go this way." And that's an opportunity that you get from any deadline. It gives you a chance to look at what you're about to do, and to say, do we really want to do this? It's a wonderful thing. Just like a death sentence, it focuses your mind, right? You can't think about anything else. I've got this impossible, crazy deadline. It must be really important, whatever this is. I had one of these where a client had a deadline. It was just impossible. They'd given up, in fact. They said, "Look, we're just not even trying to meet this marketing deadline." They say they want it by the 4th of March. We don't even know why they want it. The API is not ready. None of the software is that ready to go. It's just impossible. We don't know what on earth they're doing. And I sent the CTO, who I was coaching, over to say, "Why on earth are you demanding by the 4th of March? This is nuts. It's never going to be done." And marketing said, "Well, it's got to be then. We've already bought the balloons." And it turns out what they were doing was they had a customer conference. They're bringing all their customers together, and the big marquee thing they were going to do was to announce the amazing new API, and you could integrate a new way, and it was going to be fantastic and save you all this money. The problem was they hadn't checked with development yet, so the API was nowhere near ready. But the fantastic thing they were able to do was to discover what they were actually what was going to happen at the conference. Nobody was going to integrate with the API the next day. What they wanted to do was sign people up to go have a sales call. So there was going to be tons of time after the conference during which they could actually make the API robust, make sure there was authentication, do all the fantastic stuff to stabilize it and make it actually work. All they needed to be able to do for the conference on May the 4th, for all the balloons to drop and for everyone to be excited and for marketing to succeed and for the company to sell lots more licenses, was for them to have a demoable API. All they had to do was something on the screen that could show how wonderful this API was. And they said, "Well, we already have that. That's already done." So by getting that clear, impossible deadline and then having a conversation about it, they were able to discover what the real need was, which was really important. The company sold a lot of licenses. It was really good they had the sales conference then, and they were able to deliver many months later once the customers are actually ready to integrate. So it was a tremendous result commercially for the company that they were able to discover, first of all, this was really important. It was a real deadline. It was really happening. The balloons were bought. Starship Method was perfectly fine because they could adjust as they went and bring in different techniques and say, would this work for the demo? Would that work for the demo? They worked with marketing to build the demo. And then they had an amazing demo which worked perfectly, and they were able to accomplish the outcome that was needed. That's what the deadline was telling them. The impossible deadline gave them the message. This is very important. We need to work toward it, but not in the way that marketing originally thought of it. Marketing just said, give us an API. They thought you could snap your fingers. Well, turns out they were wrong about that, but they were right about the need to have something very impressive to have on the screen for customers to look at. And the team was able to deliver. So I think I'm about 30 seconds early. I'm just going to switch to the final slide and invite you to get in touch with me. My phone number is right there. Feel free to phone the Squirrel phone today or tomorrow. I would love to talk to you more about these topics. I like having conversations. That's why I wrote a whole book about them. You can find me on douglassquirrel.com. You can find the podcast I do with Jeffrey Frederick on troubleshootingagile.com. And if you want to get the book or find out more about what's in it and how to use conversations effectively, that's at agileconversations.com. Thanks very much.